Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad you're back listening to the show. We got a great guest today, Hannah, and it's I might know something. My handwriting is so bad. Bercege.
G.
G. I'm thinking,
E-A-Y.
is it S? I don't think that's right. So, in any case,
It's Bercegeay.
Oh yeah, from beautiful Louisiana. If you haven't been to Louisiana, I highly recommend you make it part of your bucket list. It's a very diverse state. All the parishes have their own unique little personalities and even dialects. I mean, it's just and historically very, very significant. I mean, the World War II memorial museum, excuse me, is in we call it Knowledge, but you can say New Orleans if you want. And Hannah's actually from further north there, more like a Baton Rouge. So in any case, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy with all you got going on in life, and so thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited.
Yep. Yeah. What I'd like to do is, if you could kind of paint a picture for people so they understand a little bit about who you are, because it really matters in this podcast. Who you are is very, very important. It's not just you're just a real estate person. It's one of the many things that you do, and I just think you're a well-rounded, wonderful person. I love what you're doing for Thanksgiving. You can even tell people what you're doing after the podcast for Thanksgiving too, if you want to do that. So go ahead and take it away.
So, hey, y'all, my name is Hannah Bercegeay. Like Gary said, I am from South Louisiana. I'm in between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So let's see. I have lots of hats that I wear. I am a mama, first and foremost. I've been married to my husband. We're going on 12, 13 years. We've been together almost 20 years. So I'm a mom. I am a teacher. That is my day job, my W-2s. I'm a school teacher. If you're watching, you'll see some artwork behind you for my daughter. So I'm a school teacher. I'm also a real estate agent. My passion, my true passion falls in real estate investing. My husband and I fell into it right before COVID hit. We were like, okay, we got to do something. We cannot just work our lives away. This sucks. And so we kind of started doing some research, watching some videos, reading some books, listening to podcasts. And we ran across Grant Cardone. And I remember my husband was laying on the couch. He's like, Hannah, you have got to come see this guy. He is crazy. And I'm like, I don't think he's crazy. So we did a little bit of researching, went to a couple of his conferences, and we bought our very first investment property. I don't know, 3 or 4 months later. We bought a new build construction house straight off MLS. Contractor built it. We bought it. And then we did that a few more times. I like new constructions specifically because they're new. I don't fix anything. And if something is broken within my warranty period, I call the contractor. I also own a small apartment complex. That is a whole different ballgame. But real estate for me is just an absolute passion. Like I said, I'm a teacher. I absolutely love to teach. And I think any single person on planet Earth can do real estate. You may not be knocking down 399 doors in your first deal. You might buy one house, gut it, flip it, whatever. Anybody can do this. That's my thing. Going back to what he said after this podcast, we are going camping for the week. I'm very excited. I love to camp. I love to be outdoors. Not a tent camper though. I need a toilet and air conditioning, so we have a camper. But that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. It's funny. You just reminding me when I first got married. This was a long time ago now. My wife. One of the things I was excited about is I'm a huge outdoorsman, and when we were dating, we were talking about camping, and I'll never forget. She said, "Yeah, we went camping one time. I really loved it." I said, "Really? Where'd you go? And did you have to hike?" She said, "Oh no, we didn't hike anywhere. We brought our bikes and everything. We had the grill." And I said, "Well, what kind of camp was it?" She said, "Well, we had this great RV." And she said, "I had the nicest bathroom. I had my hair dryer, all this stuff." So that's not really camping. Now they call it glamping, but I guess
It's what I like. Yeah, it's what I like.
Yep, you get outdoors, and the whole thing is to enjoy the outdoors. And
Correct.
Louisiana, I don't know if it's still the case or not, Hannah, but Louisiana used to have it was a nickname or a moniker. It's like the outdoorsman state, something I can't remember.
The sportsman state, absolutely.
Sportsman
You
state.
can do anything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely. So in any case, let's go ahead and jump into how you started adding in the real estate on top of what you already got. You've got family, you're teaching. Both my grandmothers are teachers. I have an uncle's a teacher. My ex-wife was a teacher. Of course, I'm a teacher.
That's
I
right.
just kind of stumbled into it later in life. Going from teaching and being a mom and a wife and all that, what was the starting point? How did you actually get into real estate, if you don't mind sharing that?
Absolutely. So
Mhm.
my husband and I, so we've been together forever, right? We bought this house in a gated community, golf club, golf course, whatever. It was huge. It was 3,200 square feet. It was massive. We loved the house, hated the location, but we actually kind of accidentally flipped that house. We bought the quote unquote worst house in the fancy neighborhood, repainted it, refixed some stuff, just kind of upgraded it. And then COVID hit, like really, really hit. And my husband came home. He's an operator at a chemical plant here in South Louisiana. He has a fantastic job, very dangerous, but really well paid. And he came home and he says, we don't know what's happening with COVID. I might lose my job. And I'm a public school teacher, y'all. I make like 50 grand a year. And I said, we're going to die because
Mhm.
we had this ginormous house. We had the sports car. I had the BMW. Like we quote unquote, again, made it, right? We're
Yep.
30 years old, had all this stuff. And I said, no, no, I'm not allowing it. So we'd already kind of been talking about the real estate a little bit before COVID. And then COVID hit. And of course, craziness happened. I said, okay, let's do it. We're buying real estate. So we bought that first house. I remember that first deal. We bought it was a three bed, two bath, about a 2,000 square foot house. I put 80 grand down out of my savings account. Scariest moment of my life because at that point, besides buying a house, I had never bought anything like that.
Yeah.
And we bought that house in December, right before Christmas. South Louisiana, Christmas is huge. I'm not going to say I regret that purchase. I regret buying it at that exact moment because I didn't
Okay.
get a renter the rest of December, all of January, all of February. I didn't get a renter until March. So I dropped 80 grand out of my personal savings account. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to die because
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen now? And then we got a renter and I'm like, okay, I like this. Let's keep doing it. And then we just kept going and going and going and going. I love to teach. I don't currently like the job that I'm in. Parent curriculum standards. It's too much. And I know that this is an avenue on to get
Mm-hmm.
way to get out. Spoke of my husband's job. He has a great job, but it's extremely dangerous. Chemicals, phosgene, you pick it. Sometimes you have to run for your life at his job. And I need to get him out of that job. So real estate is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the way to get him out.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what's interesting is you mentioned new construction, and this is important to me for two reasons. Number one is, you know, we're pretty sure the economy is heading, full steam ahead into a, I'll call it a correction. I don't want to call it recession. We nobody really knows. I mean, the statistics are what the statistics are. It tells us a story, and we believe the story is going to take us in a recession. Now, assuming that happens in any economy or any recession, it doesn't matter what political party is in charge or anything like that. Banks, businesses, municipalities, and federal government, state governments all look to new construction to bring us back out because it affects so many other parts of the economy, different industries. I mean, my gosh, you've got manufacturing is a part of it, all the refrigerators and stoves and dishwashers and windows and doors, all the carpeting, the roofing, all that material, and it also all has to be shipped. So you're involving the shipping. So you got manufacturing, you got shipping, and all the tradespeople that put it all together. Plumbers, electricians, carpenters, cabinetry people. I mean, it's just the municipalities, the utilities, right? Gas,
Mhm.
electric, water, sewage, all that is involved. Now, the second part is you're using it as a strategy. And the first person I ever met who did this was on the annual Rio cruise. I was actually one of the keynote speakers on this cruise in 2018. And I met an investor from Alabama, and he told me his strategy is he buys brand new homes and rents them out because he always gets really good tenants, and everything's pretty much covered for 10 years. He doesn't have to lift a finger. And so tell us, let's just take it down. Let's just take it one step at a time. Um, what was your logic or reasoning for buying new construction? Because most investors are hearing this, they're really thinking, Hannah, my gosh, that's going to be really expensive. How do I make sure I cash flow? So talk about that, and how did you get through that logic there?
So your thought process is spot on. When we said we were going to do this, our family was like, "What?" our kind of we were starting to go to meetups at this point, and they were like, no, you buy things old, you fix them, you rent them out, you don't buy new things. There's no way going to cash flow. And we're like, you know what, this is what we're going to do. So I grew up in a house that was built, I couldn't even tell you how old it is. My parents took a bunch of old houses, kind of smushed them together, and I mean, the floors were from the 1800s, the mantles from the 1700s, like old stuff. And I promise you there's duct tape holding stuff together, right? Like that's not how I wanted to do my investing story. When the interest rates were at like 2%, it just made sense because I could go buy this brand spanking new house with every warranty under the sun, rent it out. Like you said, get a great quality tenant, because the person who is renting from me from my, 2,000 square foot house is a totally different person who's going to rent from me from my 900 square foot apartment C-class building. That's right. Two different people. But it made sense at the time. We purchased it. We put a renter in there. We have had zero problems. There's actually one of my houses I haven't been to in probably a year because there's just nothing wrong with it. My tenant's great. We leave them alone. They contact us if something's up. We fix it. It's just such a simple process. But at that time, it made sense for us to do that deal. And then we just repeated the process over and over until we flat out ran out of money. And then the interest rates started to uptick, and then it no longer made sense. So then we switched to multifamily.
Yeah. Okay. So while you're acquiring the properties, were you just putting down the 20? Were you putting 20% down each time? Is that what you were doing? And then finding, okay, perfect.
Yes. So 20% each time. Now, one of them we actually did move into for a little while. So we got we put a little bit less down, so it was a primary residence. But then some situations changed, jobs, stuff like that. So we had to move out of that one, turned it into a rental. But yeah, just 20% down. So it was very expensive. But it worked for us at that time.
Yeah. We know it's interesting because when I first got started investing, that's what I did. I looked at all the different strategies. I mean, you can buy real estate, there's 30 primary strategies, but when you combine them and, modify them, you're looking at hundreds of different structuring ways to structure deals. But for me, what it came down to is I thought, you know what? Every time I do the math on all the creative purchasing techniques, it's costing me more money. At the end, I'm paying more money in interest, and I had, so I had less equity at the outset. I also had higher cash flow because I was paying more money out in lending charges. I know I can hear all the investors out there, all the old school investors saying, yeah, but you never use your own money. You just always borrow other people's money. And I understand the logic behind that because it's playing defense. The theory is if you don't have anything into it, if something goes bad, you didn't really lose anything. But to me, that has a direct impact on your psychology. In other words, if the storm hits, people that have nothing at stake, they just jump overboard, leave everybody else behind, and that's what leads to foreclosures. And at the time now I wasn't banking, so I might have been a little biased, but also my I don't want to offend people here, but my conscience, I'm thinking, I don't ever want to let people down like that. I don't want to let the neighbors down. And the banks, the people loaning the money, it's not just some fictitious, nameless, faceless entity. There's people behind the bank they're whose money is at stake, right? There's investors in the bank, stockholders and shareholders. Not only that, it's horrible for an economy when it's overloaded with REOs. REOs, of course, the foreclosures. It drives down the values of the properties in the area, and it drives up the cost of borrowing money, and it makes money tighter. That's really why. To me, it's a big picture thing. So the other side of it is if you have 20% of it, into it, that's a substantial stake. You're not likely to easily walk away from that deal. You're going to do whatever you can to keep that thing afloat. And the final thing is this. This is my preaching moment, guys, for the lesson today. I'm going to tell you, if you look back over the history of time and you could plug yourself in any economy, if you had held onto your properties through all of that, you'd be way, way, way further ahead. Okay. So hanging on to your properties is the way to go, not letting them go in foreclosure and bankruptcy and stuff like that. That's the way to build wealth. Do it the hard way. It looks like the hard way up front, but long term, it's the easy way. It's the best way to build long term equity and wealth and income. So try to preach, Hannah, but
no, you're good.
But it's complex, and there's a lot more at stake. And the big picture is far more important than the short picture. So let's go. So let's move forward from here. You mentioned you had a multifamily. So you did the shingles, and then when the interest rates went up, you saw the landscape changing. tell me what was your motivation there? Was it the fact that there will be more tenants coming into the tenant base, and then the rates, the rents are going up, or was it tied? You mentioned the interest rates, or kind of what was the overall thought process there, if you don't mind sharing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, we have been going to conferences all over the nation. We've been reading books and podcasts, and everyone said the natural progression was multifamily. So I'm like, okay, well, if everyone is saying it, that's what we need to do. And at that point, we were in the single family home pretty hot and heavy, but the interest rates were starting to rise pretty rapidly. For me, my threshold when I buy a new construction, before I start like really hurting with the interest rates, the property taxes, insurance, I want at least $900 of a cash flow spread. Whenever the interest rate was like 2%, I'm getting like 12, 15, 16, $1,800 for some of my houses for my cash flow. And so it's like, okay, I started seeing that spread get smaller and smaller. And I'm like, okay, I want this big spread because things happen, right? People lose jobs, there's vacancies. I want a very large cushion. So I'm a little conservative on that end. And so one day I was actually at the doctor's appointment. And so I'm a talker, I don't know if you realize this, but I'm like, real estate, real estate, real estate, tax advantages. Everyone should do this, blah, blah, blah. And my doctor's like, I've always wanted to get into real estate. I'm also I'm a real estate agent. So he's like, hey, how about I just buy a house? So I sold my doctor friend a house doing the exact method that Brad and I had followed for our single family homes. And I'm like, this is so awesome. I said, but I've always wanted to get into multifamily. I want to buy an apartment complex. He's like, I have a patient, I think, who is selling an apartment complex. And I'm like, oh, we are all best friends now. And so my doctor and I, we partnered together and we bought that apartment complex. I will say that the clientele totally different than my houses, right? Someone who's paying me $975 a month is not the same person paying me $2,400 a month, but they are hardworking people. I do have some issues here or there for some people. There's always going to be some drama, but overall, we've been very, very blessed with this apartment complex. I would value it at like a C-ish, C. When we bought it, I would say C minus. We bought it from the sweetest person on planet Earth. He helped us so much through like changing windows and like how to get the energy bill moved over from his. I mean, just so great. Actually, my husband still talks to him probably twice a week. And we have brought that building up from like a C minus to like a C plus plus plus. It's not quite B just because of the way it is, but we've changed it around a lot. We've changed out some negative tenants. We've raised some rents, which is of course fabulous. And I genuinely believe that I'm actually helping the community too, because although the building was not bad, we've improved it to where community members are like, hey, we really like what you're doing. So it's definitely been a 160, but it's really been great. It's really been great.
Okay.
Or I should say 360. I'm sorry.
How many units in that building?
It's 11. It's 11 building. It's 11 units.
So that's a nice jump from single family up to 11 unit building. So
it is. It is. My next jump though is I'm hoping to do at least 100 units on the next purchase. So I'm ready for that big jump.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to jump into definitely a very much related subject. So you acquire the properties, the single family homes is much easier because they were brand new. So you don't have a lot of no deferred maintenance, quite frankly.
Correct.
And anything that does go wrong, generally your most new construction, you're covered for 10 years. Just carte blanche. I mean, it's great. And then you get the multifamily, that it's already existing building. You mentioned, replicating windows and things like that. So what are some of the lessons you learn when you realize, okay, acquiring the property is half the game. The other half of the game is managing it for profit. But what were some of your big aha moments and lessons, if you don't mind sharing,
Absolutely. So I will say that my husband and I know that Jake and Gina talk about this a lot, but we really pride ourselves on being the Chick-fil-A of customer service. Even when a tenant has blown up my phone with 17 nasty messages, we try really, really, really hard to put a professional, positive spin on things. So I will say that people get their feelings hurt and their panties in a twist for all kinds of things. We try really hard to work on that. So biggest takeaway is the relationship that you can build with a tenant. I know a lot of people like to be hands off. For this building, it makes sense for us to be hands on. We run it. We take care of all the stuff. We do it. So relationships is a big thing. That's one aha moment. Another aha moment is the building was built in 1979. So if a water heater is working, don't touch it. Don't touch things that are still working. When you're like, oh, you know what? Let me upgrade. No. If it is working, leave it alone. I'm going to say that's another one. Pets can be a problem, but they're also great ways to add revenue, right? Pet rent, pet deposits, definitely vet out your people because, I'm not talking about certain breeds, but there are rough animals out there. And, I have families who live in these units, and I'm not going to let you have a rough animal that's going to hurt a family. So those would probably be my biggest takeaways, along with having to build a network. When I need something painted, I am calling Mr. Richard on the phone. Mr. Richard, can you please come help me? Yes, Miss Hannah, I'll be there. Or Mr. William, something happened. I need help. Will you come help me? And he comes help me. I have plumbers. I have painters. I have people who work on the laundry. I have a lawn guy, another Mr. Brian, who's fabulous. You have to be able to build relationships in this business, whether it's for multifamily or single family. But I would say that's probably my biggest aha is the relationship part, for sure.
Did you know that you can participate in class every Monday? We call it Monday Night Live, 7 p.m. Eastern, with me and dozens of other investor agents from around the country, in fact, the world. Every Monday, totally free. No selling, no recruiting, just straight up education on anything and everything in real estate. And we have a lot of good guests coming on once or twice a month, bringing in expertise on subjects like how to buy a house with crypto, okay? How about them apples? What about AI? How's AI affecting our business? How about the metaverse, blockchain processing? We're already using it in title work. So come on to Monday Night Live. Be ready to take notes and ask questions because it's live and engaging, and you get to participate by asking questions and meeting others. So we'll see you there. Go to realestatewithgarywilson.com. Click on the resource tab, drop down, and you'll see Monday Night Live. And in there, you can see one of the most recent classes. But more importantly, you can register for class as many as you want going up to like the end of the year, I believe. So in any case, do that. We'll see you on Monday Night Live. Look forward to meeting you in person. Take care. Yeah, absolutely. What you're doing is you're building a team,
Absolutely.
So you've got, like you said, the electrician. Yeah. And even there's other people on your team too, the municipal employees, inspectors, for example, zoning, occupancy, and then utility people, the electric, gas, water, sewage, garbage collection, then any municipal employees when you have to get things done because the old saying, you can't fight city, it doesn't pay to fight city hall. Well, what they mean by that is even governing official, it doesn't matter if it's federal, state, local is where it's at. And when you make friends with those people, the lenders are part of your team, accountants, attorneys. I mean, the list just goes on, appraisers. Oh my gosh. The list goes on and on. One of the things you learn is, and you've got when you mentioned this, how you dealt with the tenant, had the nasty attitude. When you work with municipal people, for example, I've seen a lot of investors get frustrated. They talk back, they argue, disagree. That's not going to make those people want to help you succeed. So what I learned, this is from my banking days, is always ask people, what did they suggest? You tell them, hey, I'm buying this 11-unit building. It needs, some upgrades. What would you suggest is the best way for me to approach this? Because I'm sure they've dealt with other landlords before. Make them part of your team. Make them part of the solution. Same thing with lenders. I never went to a bank and tried to hide things or say, I know I'm a great credit risk. I've got a lot of properties. I really want the best deal. I want the lowest rate, the longest term, blah, blah, blah. The better approach is, hey, I'm getting ready to buy my 11th property. I've got, 6 single family homes, 11-unit building. What would you suggest for me to be my best approach to get this next property? Make them part of the solution. I can promise you, I can't guarantee you because I can't use that word, but I can promise you, those lenders will go bend over backwards to make sure you get a loan. Okay.
Right.
So the thing that I like about what you're describing is I call it playing defense. Playing offense is acquiring a property. Playing defense is defending the property, against, deterioration, bad tenants and things like that. And you mentioned you had to clean house, so to speak, with some of the tenants. And I know we're going to probably get short on time here very quickly, but I want people to hear this part. If you don't mind sharing, what was your approach when you had, I'm assuming there were tenants you had to let them go, so to speak. But what was your approach? Or what lessons did you discover there?
So we'll say it kind of goes back to the whole relationship building thing. I had one family, for instance, I've had to let a couple go when we bought the building. We had I wouldn't say super bad drug problem, but we had some issues, lots of cops being called out for certain units. We just had to say, look, this is just not going to work for us. We're not renewing your lease. We Two of them went without big issues. We had a couple incidences, but nothing insane. But one family, it was a mom and a dad and three children and like nine cats.
Boy.
When we did an inspection on them, which by the way, cats are super gross in units. But when we did the inspection on them, it was squalor. Like
Yeah.
I have never seen filth like this. And it wasn't just like garbage on top of each other. It was roaches crawling all over the walls,
Yeah.
flying mattresses in the living room that were like black in places. The bathtub, for instance, the children who were bathing in the tub were actually using their fingernails and scraping images into the scum. That family did not have two nickels to rub together. It was so disgusting. We should have truly evicted them. But my husband, bleeding heart over here, was like, Hannah, I can't just kick them out. They literally have nothing. They were so skinny, like they didn't have food. It was just horrible. We paid them. We paid them to leave. We should not have, but we paid them their rent plus a tiny bit more, just to know on a good conscience that we did the right thing. And we gave them, because their children were in school, we gave them till summer. I want to say July 1st or something to go find something. I don't believe they found something, but I do know we saw them. They put everything into their big minivan, and I remember they cashed a check as soon as we gave it to them, and they spent a few nights in a hotel. And I felt so bad for it because I remember I would pass that hotel on the way to the complex. We were renovating that unit.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? That hotel is probably the nicest thing they've ever been in. So then I didn't feel as bad with her. And they've now gotten on their feet. Things are better. But it just goes back to talking nice to people. They knew how they were living. They knew they could not live like that. That's just, at this point, like, I'm afraid the wall is going to crumble with your roaches and hit another unit. And that's not okay.
Right.
So that's what we did to rectify that situation. And I hated giving up that money, but it was the right thing. I clear conscious. When I talk to God one day, I'm going to feel okay about that choice.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, too, is you have an obligation for the neighbors, too. I mean, if it's an
Correct.
11-unit building, that
Yes.
one unit, if it's infested, could absolutely, ruin the entire building and 10 other families. So
Correct.
that was that's one of the lessons I learned. Is I was a bleeding heart too in the beginning, and I'd listen to every story they had and
Mhm.
let them, let them give them a break, let them, pay me a payments, and finally I learned the lesson everybody kept telling me verbally is what not to do. I did all those things.
Yep.
And the biggest lesson I learned was actually from a banker that I would borrow from. He also was an investor. He had a lot of student housing. He said, you're actually not doing them any favors. He said,
You're
you're
hurting
actually
them.
enabling it. Yeah, you're
Yep.
enabling them to continue like that. And you're subjecting everybody else to harm. He said, that's a liability you got to take seriously, not just a legal consideration, but if you feel strongly about that one family, how do you feel about the 10 other families? And that was
Right.
really what did it for me. And the funny thing is, Anna, is I actually wrote a book on this. That I always would joke to say I should write a book on all the crazy things that happen in real estate investing and that nobody else writes about. They just give you all it's a walk in the park. It's easy. Everybody
Yeah.
make a millionaire. Blah blah blah. It's not that easy. I mean, you do have to play offense and defense, but any case, when it comes to the things that go wrong, you have to address them quickly and correctly. And the cool thing is when you have that type of approach, when you take the big picture in mind and you think about all the other related the neighbors that are not even your tenants, the neighbors around there, not and your tenants, it allows you to make good business decisions, but also do it in a compassionate way. So like you're helping that person. I
Mhm.
learned that lesson the hard way too. You can either take them to court and get into a fight, or you can say, look, you know, I'm going to help you out here. I'll help you. I'll pay for the van. I'll pay for the rental van to put your stuff. I'll even pay for storage for 30 days, that kind of stuff to help you on. I said, I'm not trying to be mean. I just want you to know I have an obligation to all the other families in this building. And I
Right.
hope you understand that. And I would do the same thing for you if the shoes were you were on another foot. And usually that approach worked. Every now and then I have to still go to court. And, we call them professional um, deadbeats and scammers. They knew the rules. They knew the system. They knew exactly when to pay and, what to say in court and all this stuff. I'd had tenants show up that were seemingly healthy, and all of a sudden they show up with a cast on their leg, with those wraparound casts on crutches
Yeah.
and stuff. It's amazing the games people play. But most judges are up to that kind of stuff. They understand that. We're always prepared. Whenever we did have to go to court, we had a complete set of documentation, everything from the time they made the first phone call to inquire about the property all the way to when we asked them to leave and everything in between. And tenants are generally not showing up prepared like that. They're just have
Right.
a story to tell, and the judge is like, guys, I've heard this and seen this hundreds and thousands of times. We're going to follow the rules here and do the right thing. Mr. Wilson's prepared. He's not here trying to harm you. He's trying to take care of his property and everybody else in the property. And so in any case, it usually worked out when the occasion we did have to do that. But I appreciate you sharing that. And by the way, the book is called Turning uh, Rental Problems into Real Estate Profits. And I do put some stories in there. Some are kind of, serious, and some are kind of
Mm-hmm.
lighthearted. There's some humor. There's some funny things that happen too. In fact, there's anything you can think of that, like, even though it might have been painful at the time or crazy, you can look back on it and laugh like it was humorous. The kind of things that people would do, human nature.
They lie. People lie. I hate
Yeah,
to say that, but they
yeah,
lie. And,
mhm,
especially I don't really have this in my houses. And that's another thing that's terrible to say, but my ones who pay more, they don't, they tell me straight up what's going on. They pay their bills, whatever. But
right.
my complex is just a different class of people. And they will come up with the most insane stories like, oh, I don't have rent this month because CPS tried to take my kid, but it really wasn't CPS. And it was really somebody playing a mean joke on my kid. And I'm like, are you what? Like, oh my God. Turns
Yeah,
out they ended up getting a back tattoo and their whole went towards this back tattoo. And I'm like, what? Like, you
yeah,
tell me, I have this one girl, this one tenant I hire out sometimes help me clean a unit or whatever, just to help her
right.
out, to be honest with you. She's a great girl. They struggle. And she said, oh yeah, after I pay you rent, I've got 17 cents in my bank account. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, how are you breathing? Because I'd be hyperventilating because that's no money. You have a kid and air conditioning and rent and like cell phone bills, all these things. She's like, oh, it's fine. I paid you. We're good. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I don't understand. I have another
Yeah,
one who fought me tooth and nail about every single issue on planet Earth. The grass wasn't as green as it should be. And, the flowers aren't
oh
blooming.
yeah,
Like, baby, it is South Louisiana. You got to stop. Well, we gave them their deposit once they finally moved out. We gave them their deposit back. Here's $1,000 check. Goodbye. Do you know it's been
yeah.
8 months and they ain't cashed that check yet?
Holy
Eight
smokes!
months. So I'm like, of course, I'm like, okay, checking Facebook, like, are you in jail? Did you die? Because my banker
Yeah,
said I get to keep that $1,000 now. So this sounds terrible, but like, joke's on you now because I'm keeping your money after you
yeah,
have given me absolute hell this entire year. So I would have to say that one. That would, in a
yeah,
mean, twisted way, that's mine.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if this is still the case or not. So people listening, don't quote me on this or hold me to it. But when I was in banking, there was a 6 month rule. If a check
Mhm.
wasn't cashed within 6 months, technically the bank didn't have to honor it.
So,
Um,
by the way, I added to my lease based off what you're saying. I actually was talking to another landlord in Baton Rouge, and he does kind of D class areas, Section 8. In his lease now, it says if you do not cash your check, your deposit, whatever, in 2 weeks, it is void. And
oh wow,
he makes them sign next to it because he's run into this issue so many times because Section 8, the government's paying, they didn't care about cashing it. And because of this, now like you can't, there's no way to fight it. Like you literally sign, he does time, date, stamp, the whole thing. And I've added that to my lease. Of course, I've never had an issue with it, but could you
yeah,
imagine having $1,000 check in your wallet? I don't know if I'm going to check it or
no,
I'm not going to cash it. Don't
yeah,
understand at all.
yeah. Yeah, I always say usually people with money are smart with their money, and that's why they have money.
Correct. I agree
You
with
know,
that statement 100%.
yeah. I mean, half the again. I always say this: making it is half the battle, keeping it is the other half of the battle. And
That's the harder
unfortunately,
part for sure.
and most people they're not taught that. There's no courses on teaching that stuff. It's all how to make it, not how to keep it. Hey, I want to do one. I know we're probably at the time later, but I want to go cover one little thing here, if you don't mind, on the
Absolutely.
pets. What did you do with the pet? Like, did you come up with a pet policy to so that you did make money, versus like for me when I first started, I had a no pet policy. Only to find out I still had pets.
Yeah.
You know, boyfriends would get girlfriends kitty cats because they wanted to make up or whatever and stuff like that. But so tell me, you implemented something that involved, I guess, a deposit, additional rent. Was
Yes.
it separate forms? If you could go over that real quick, that'd be awesome.
So exact same thing you were just talking about. We didn't want pets in the beginning, but then we realized how much of a pool of people it shut down to because everybody has a pet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna talk about the apartment complex because the houses are different. But with our apartment complex for the dogs, and we do roughly 35 pounds, kind of depending on the dog, and below it's $25 a month per pet, 2 pet limit. Cats, I'm sorry, we have a unit. The cat peed everywhere. I feel like I can still feel cat pee in my eyes. They're $40 a month. Um, Pets, dogs and cats, we have $300 non-refundable pet fee is what we charge.
Okay.
If your cat ruins something, that money goes towards it. I have one tenant who was an inherited tenant, very nice couple. They have snakes, iguanas, they had bearded dragons, they had lizards, they had cockroaches, they had cats, they had a couple dogs. I was like, we can't have all of this. But they were such good tenants. I didn't want to lose the tenant. And so I contacted from my insurance company. I got a list of approved animals, right? Snakes, absolute no-go. You ain't having a snake here because if that gets out, I am not being liable for your pet anaconda for like eating this person's kid. No snakes, no cockroaches. Just it's apartment building. Like you get those by yourself. I don't need help with that. So we cut it down. Cats, dogs, a bearded dragon. I'm fine with because it lives in its own little cage. So yes, I do charge pet rent, and I charge a pet fee. If you move out and we've had zero issues, we sometimes give the fee back.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. It's funny you mentioned you wrapped it up with that because when we found out when we implemented our pet policy, and it was pretty strict, we actually did make more money. We were more profitable, and we attracted the better pet owners. The better pet owners expect to have that kind of thing. If you were loosey goosey, yeah, we can have a pet, no worry.
Yep.
The bad pet owners, oh, we're good. We got one of these not structured, not organized. So you get the better pet owners, and you actually make more money. You know,
correct.
So, well, listen, Hannah, we're not out of time. We're a little bit over it, but I just want to thank you for doing this, and for everybody listening. Please leave a review if you don't mind. It'd be great if you could do that. It's on 30 different channels, including the one you're listening to now, whichever that is. But of course, Apple's the biggie. If you could do that. And Hannah, I understand you have a podcast too. What can you give everybody the podcast name so they can listen to your podcast?
Absolutely. Thank you for plugging that. So my podcast, guys, is called The Financial Game Plan with Hannah. I'm a couple months old. My podcast, the premise is anyone can do this. We talk about everything from pet rent to cap rate. Kind of depends on where you are in your strategy, where you are in your journey. I have tons to listen to. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find a podcast, you can find me. I'm also on YouTube. I also have a new company coming out called Highland Point Capital, so be on the lookout for that. It'll be highlandpointcap.com. That should be live in about 3 to 4 weeks. I'm really excited about that. But yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X, whatever it's called. Find Threads, I think it is. Actually, I don't know. Find me anywhere you want, guys. Call me. My number is 225-324-2319. I will help you in any way possible. I love to help. Anyone can do this. Anyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah, for sharing it. And thank you for listeners for listening. Leaving a review. Appreciate that. And the last thing you do before you leave the internet is go visit globalinvestoragent.com, where you can find real estate agents who are actually trained to work with you and I, the investors. They're not your typical agents. They know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off market deals all over the U.S. They've got tools to give you U.S. wide access to all the properties, all the data, everything. So do that, and thanks again for listening, and thank you again, Hannah. God bless you all. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Probably by the time this comes out, it may be Christmas. I'm not sure, but in any case, we'll see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.